January the 17th, 2026. Guys, quite a night last night watching what was going on in Minneapolis, and it got worse. We went till about 10 p.m. Central, and then the guys there started to try to tear down the barrier fence that was erected last week, jumping on it, trying to pull the wire off it. A lot of tear gas and things like that. Just paid anarchy was basically what we're seeing. And it's kind of a sign of the end times, complete chaos and destruction, and that's what they want. Now, what you're looking at, and this will all tie together, so be patient with me. This is a drawing going back a long way, and it's from information taken from the Sumerian text, and it talks about the end of days, Armageddon, and the prophecies of the return. And this particular chapter that this came out of is called Darkness at Noon. But again, it's the end of days and Armageddon prophecy in the Sumerian text. Now, this is a map of Nibiru, or Nibiru, any way you want to say it. There's some very interesting characteristics in this map that we need to look at. And what you got, again, this is the supposed orbit of Nibiru right here, well outside our solar system. And in the text, it says every 3,600 years it returns to the solar system. Well, it's been 3,600 years since the last time. And we noted that by looking at a lot of the events that happened 3,600 years ago in a video I did a few months back. But there's some, again, interesting things here. We're going to point them out. First, the sun's in the center, then Mercury, Venus, and then the dotted line is Earth. Then Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. This would be Pluto and Uranus here. Now, a couple of things we'll talk about. We're talking about 2200 BC or 2220 BC, spring equinox, 60 BC right here, and then 2100 AD. We're in the 21st century, guys. Okay, 2100 AD. Notice the perigee right here. Perigee is pointed towards Cancer. That's the closest approach of Nibiru in this chart. And it's just like any other comet or something that comes through the solar system. It's never the same path because it gets changed each time it comes around our sun or the planets. Slight gravitational tugs will throw the orbit different. Anyway, notice that it's pointed towards Cancer also right there. These are this is the zodiac, and they were heavy into watching the stars. In one of the last videos I did about this, we were in Iraq. We were in one of the cities there where you got the airstrips and for the different vessels. Sapur, the city of Sapur was the landing strip, or basically the airport, and then the different cities going south from there back to the Persian Gulf were all built for the different groups of Nibiru citizens, or the Anunnaki, as some people call them. And I showed the map, guys. Remember coming off the Persian Gulf and going all the way up to Mount Ararat, where they had different cities, and then Sapur was the port, or the spaceport. But each one of those cities along that path had a ziggurat. That's the pre-pyramid buildings. And I think that's where the pyramids came from. But each one had a different Sumerian demigod and its own ziggurats, not just the ones that you see now. They were all magnificent cities. Anyway, they had climbed up onto the top of one of the ziggurats in what's called like the observatory. And the wise men basically watched Nibiru rise behind a series of stars that came up, a series of planets that came up over the horizon that evening. And what they saw was the 12th planet, Nibiru, rise. And of course, Anu was there at that time, and they saw that planet. But anyway, again, 2100 AD, and right here, Cancer and the perigee, and look at the path. Now, right now, we're dealing with, again, Earth's dotted line, Mars, and Jupiter. we're going to look at the JPL, but Atlas is right in the middle of Jupiter and Mars, right there. Something's going to happen in just a few days on the 22nd. We're going to have the perfect alignment between the axis of the Earth and the Sun and the axis of Atlas and the Sun. And what that's going to do is basically create an alignment, guys. In other words, the night side of the Earth will be looking directly at Atlas as it's headed out towards Jupiter, but the Earth will be blocking the sunlight. We're going to be in that alignment, and what it's going to do is create what the astrophysicists are saying now is the perfect observation time. It's going to last for a few weeks, this alignment. What it does is knock out the glare of the sun, and the telescopes, as the Earth rotates, that are facing outward toward Jupiter, are going to get a non-shadowed view of Atlas. In other words, any shadows from the sun and its angle, because we're not lined up exactly at this moment, will create shadows from dust. It will create it from objects inside the coma of Atlas and all of that. So on the 22nd, coming up, today's the 17th, in 5 days, we're going to be at the perfect alignment for observation without interference from sunlight and shadows. Okay, that's coming from Avi Loeb too. He's setting up for observations for him. But again, this path takes 3,600 years. Again, perigee Cancer, that's important to realize what they're looking at, and 21st century AD. That's where we're at now. And from the writings of that time, it says, taken together, the astronomical texts from the time of Ashurbanipal describe a planet appearing from the solar system's edge, rising and becoming visible when it reaches Jupiter or even Saturn before that, and then curving down towards the ecliptic. That's what we're seeing in the diagram that you just looked at. At its perigee, which is closest approach, the planet at the crossing becomes Nibiru in the zodiac of Cancer. That, as the enclosed schematic and not to scale, the one we just looked at, took place in the age of the Ram during the zodiacal age of Aries. But now we're dealing with Cancer. Okay? Now they called it then, you had Anu, you had Nibiru. Anu was the head god of the Anunnaki, and they call the planet the celestial lord. Such clues regarding the orbit path of the celestial lord and its reappearance, sometimes using the constellations as a celestial map, are also found in biblical passages, thereby revealing knowledge that must have been internationally available. In Jupiter will thy face be seen. This is Psalm 17. The Lord from the south shall come. His shining splendor will beam as light, predicted the prophet Habakkuk in chapter 2. Alone he stretches out the heavens and treads upon the highest deep. He arrives at the Great Bear, Sirius, and Orion, and the constellations of the south. In the book of Job, chapter 9, it states that the prophet Amos foresaw the celestial Lord smiling his face upon Taurus and Aries. From Taurus to Sagittarius he shall go. These verses describe a planet that spans the highest heavens and orbiting clockwise, or what's called retrograde, just like Atlas. The planets go counterclockwise. It says again, these verses describe a planet that spans the highest heavens and orbiting clockwise or retrograde, arrives via the southern constellations. It is a trajectory on a vaster scale akin to that of Halley's Comet. And because it comes from outside the universe, is what they're saying. It's a very long orbit, not even sure of exactly where some of these things come from. Outside of the Oort cloud for sure. It says a telling clue in regard to Ashurbanipal's expectations was the meticulous rendering into Akkadian of Sumerian descriptions of the ceremonies attending the state visit of Anu and Antu to Earth circa 4000 BCE. It was 3,600 years ago. This section dealing with their stay in Uruk describes how at eve time an observer was stationed at the topmost stage of the tower. That's what I was just talking about. Remember that meeting? Anu was down. He came down. Big ceremony, celebration. At the time that the planet was going to become, that he came from was going to become visible from Earth. It says, again, the section's dealing with a stay in Uruk, describing how an eve time an observer was stationed to the topmost stage of the tower, the big ziggurat there, to watch for and announce the appearance of the planets one after the other, until the planet of the great Anu of heaven came into view, whereupon all the gods assembled to welcome the divine couple, recited the composition to the one who grows bright in the heavenly planet of the god Anu, and sang the hymn, "The Creator's image has arisen." The long text then described the ceremonial meals, the retreat to the nighttime chambers, and the processions the next day, and so on. And guys, as I read that a few months ago, the astronomers counted the planets coming up in a line, and then the 12th planet. Very interesting. Let's take a look at the JPL model for Atlas 3I, or 3I Atlas, as some say. And again, it is right here between Mars, the orbit of Mars, and the orbit of Jupiter. That's where they saw Nibiru. That's where they named it, between Mars and Jupiter. Now, Earth is right here in the blue. Atlas is moving out. Let me pull this up just a little closer, guys. This thing is moving, so bear with me. On the 22nd, Atlas will be moving towards Jupiter, and it's going to create basically a shadow on Jupiter or on Atlas of the Earth. And that's going to allow Earth observatories to film Atlas without the glare hitting the dust or any of the particles associated with it, and give a very in-depth look. So that may be the day, and it's supposed to last a couple of weeks. It may be the day that we get the best images. Again, the one I have of a fleet with a shield in front of it that I've had from Jump Street, guys, is exactly what Avi Loeb and other people are starting to describe now. Something with a forward jet, shouldn't be happening, and with a shield in front of it. And then I heard Ray's astrophotography, heard him talk about it appeared to have properties of a planet. And when I see the images, guys, of the forward tail and the jet in the back, it's really three. It looks like a winged planet if you look closely at some of the images, just saying. But let's pull down and look at some of the technical information. Now, today is January the 17th right here, and the 22nd is when we're supposed to be able to get the best images, because the Earth is basically blocking the sun from striking Atlas from our perspective. But notice where it's at, Cancer, the entire time, the constellation. That's what you'd be looking at. Just the same way that the ancients were watching it in Siberia 3,600 years ago. And remember in that video, the 3,600 years ago had to do with the leaving of, or the lifting of the gods. Something was coming, and they left. You had the battle between Enlil's group and Enki's group that went on for thousands of years, and it was all about to come to a head. Well, the gods were tired of it. The lesser gods, which are just superior intellectual beings, they weren't gods, but they lifted off. They took away their protection. Remember, that's how it was said. And then if you look back, after this visit of Anu, and he left, all hell broke loose through the entire region. Syria came in and captured part of that. They had to, the Sumerians had to get with different groups, guys, to come in and defeat Syria and take back their land. It got really bad when it said the gods lifted their hands and their protection over these people. And that had to do with the battle with the Enlil and Enki again. Enlil wanted the people dead. Enki wanted to preserve them, right? But there's a lot of coincidences in that map we saw of Nibiru, where it was when it was spotted between Mars and Jupiter, and where to look inside the constellation of Cancer. So we know that at one day in time coming up, there's going to be events like this. We don't know when, but we're told. And in this chapter, one of the things it talks about is blocking the sun. Anyway, guys, we're watching it. I believe to this day that the image I showed, the thermal image, after Atlas had come around the sun, that showed the shields with the craft behind it, is the best image so far, and everything else has kind of been hidden. There's no way that that image, I mean, it wasn't AI generated or anything. It was simply looking at the heat aspects of a thermal imaging, seeing the forward shield and all the craft within it. There's something going on. I don't know what it is. I haven't reported about Atlas much lately because I know what it is. So it's, to me, if I just kept doing Atlas videos 2 or 3 times a week, I'm just beating the same old dead horse. I know what it is. It is a fleet of craft. Whether they're coming to Earth, I don't know. What were they doing coming through the solar system at 3,600 years intervals? We'll see. Could it be an advanced probe even? But I did see, I think it was possibly, and you guys know who Dobsonian Power is. It's kind of like Ray's astrophotography. But he showed an image, I think it was him, and of Atlas moving through the sky, and something lifted away from it. A very large object lifted above that Atlas and moved backwards out into the solar system like a probe. And that's just been in the last 2 weeks, maybe something like that, not very long ago. So how many times does that happen when a space or when a telescope was not aimed at it? But there was definitely like an orb type object lifting away from the main body, moving out of the coma that's created by that glow and up into space above it. I don't know, guys, but I thought there's a lot. These are very interesting coincidences. And I'm in chapter 12 called Darkness at Noon of the Sumerian text, and I'm going to expand on that, but I just wanted to touch base. Everybody's saying, BP, you just forgot about Atlas, but I haven't. Like I said, I'm just tired of trying to explain what it was with the information that we have, and now we're getting more info and looking back further in history, and it's starting to become more interesting to me as we see these coincidences, if they even exist. But guys, I just wanted to come in here this Saturday morning. We got a little rain last night. The temperature got cold. It's 45 right now, and it's going to be in the 20s here for the next 4 nights. So with this, one of those Arctic vortexes that I talked about dipping down into the southeast, there's 4 of them between now and the end of this month. But I've got some of that information recorded too. I'll get it into a video. Guys, we're watching this. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.